Welcome to the November wrap-up. This month was both good and bad, both in the quality of the reads and the quantity of the reads, but it was a holiday month. My mental health just went vroom in terms of like my thesis and just like other things were happening. I was stressed and couldn't read sometimes when I could have read, like there was time. But that's okay. I read 10 things total, 8 of them were physical or e-reads, and 2 were audio. One of the physical was like immersion, but I still count it in that section. I will have the page number on the screen. I predict it is lower than normal. I usually try to shoot for at least 100 pages per day, and I'm pretty sure I didn't quite meet that this month. Maybe I will have, but if I had, it would have been like barely. Because a lot of these are novellas, which I'm not mad about. I'm not actually disappointed in myself. It's just, I think, a low month for me because I was busy and my mental health was just everywhere. So let's get into it like I normally do with my wrap-ups. I split things into categories. So for this month, I have 3 categories: novellas and short stories, unique narrative structure, and fantasy. And let's get into it, starting with the novellas and short stories. We'll start with the short stories, which was the Mythic Dream anthology, which I finally finished. I started this midway through October and was just gradually going through it. And then in the last 2 days of the month, if you watched my Wednesday reading vlog where I did my holiday vacation stuff, this was a book I was hoping I could finish before the month ran out just because I wanted a cleaner, fresh start. And I finished it. I read 6 stories in like 12 hours, which is that's a lot for me. Normally, it's not like it's a lot of pages, but that's a lot of different writing styles to consume in such a short period of time, at least for my brain. And overall, I gave this collection 4 stars because I think the lowest stories were 3 stars, but there were a lot that I really liked at like 4.5 or 5 stars, so the average is like 4. That's kind of standard for an anthology, and I liked the premise of it, the assignment of subvert or retell different myths that inspire you. And this anthology really solidified for me that when someone like on average is writing short stories, they're just on a different level than people who typically write novels. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just when a novelist seems to write a short story, on average, not always, there are exceptions, Arkady Martine being one of them, they take a story and make it shorter, but that it wasn't meant to be shorter. Like I could tell that story would have breathed better in a novel versus like someone who writes a short story, it's like this is the length for this story that needs to be told, and it's like perfection. So I don't know how else to describe it than that. I loved a whole bunch of stories in here. I'll probably update my story graph and Goodreads with some of my highlights, so you can look out for that. If I get stuff together, maybe I'll have it up by the time this video's up. If not, I'm sorry, it's not there yet. Life's a little chaotic. And now into the novellas. We'll talk about The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector. I buddy read this with Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative, and it was something. So I haven't read a literary work in a long time. And this is definitely a work that would have benefited from being in a classroom, highlighting, annotating, discussing with people. And I'm glad I got to discuss this with Leslie, and I'm glad there was the Codex Cantina video to watch afterwards, because she is so intentional with her grammar, with her word choice. Like the way her characters think and the way she writes the narrative it's something like I've never read before. Like the closest I can think is sometimes the way that I read Jemison, but it doesn't have like the same intriguing plot as Jemison. Like this was very much a story of an author who's trying to write the story of this poor girl, and the author's a trip. I think I liked those parts the most. And then this poor girl, it was sad. It was a very tragic story, and I really liked being in the author's head because the way she chose to write his process in creating this narrative was so interested and reminded me of myself being in like a creative writing class, being like, all right, the assignment is to write a short story, I guess here I go. Like I do really like when authors write about authors and the different ways that is written, but also just like the stream of consciousness, almost fragmented feeling at times. It was really cool. So I'm excited to maybe one day read more from her. I'm really glad that I finally read this. Thank you, Jocelyn, for getting me this book almost a year ago. I finally read both the books you sent me. And now we'll get into the Patron buddy read. I already put up the spoiler vlog. We have chatted about it in the Discord. This was The Black Tides of Heaven. Unfortunately, probably kind of a miss for me. And not because it wasn't intriguing or good or didn't have themes I cared about. I think it's because I wanted this to be a novel. It's about 170 pages when you look at it in like full-size paperback. The Kindle says 230. It's not that long in terms of like normal page size. And I really liked these characters. I really liked the political world. I really liked the magic and the tension, and I really would have loved this to be a 300-story narrative or a 350-page narrative. And it being short meant that I had to skip points that I would have been my favorite parts of the novel. There are character development things that don't quite happen off page, but a lot of it happens off page and I don't get to interact with it. There's several time jumps, and I think sometimes time jumps are useful, but if you use them and skip so much space and we don't get to fill in that space with flashbacks or any sort of illusion, I'm left wanting. So I really liked the world. I thought the world was so spectacularly cool. I liked this sibling relationship. I thought the antagonistic force was a trip. She was a trip. And I'm excited to read more of the novellas. I've not given up on the Tencert series. I was just a little disappointed because I liked so much of it, but the execution was not entertaining. I was not as entertained as I could be. And I think it's because it was restricted to a novella form, which kind of, it's like what I was talking about with the short stories. Sometimes a story I feel like can take up more space, or some stories should take up less space, right? Like, I think the art of being a good storyteller is knowing that. And I think some people probably really do like the length of this story. But I know a bunch of us who were buddy reading it would have loved it to have been a novel. Like, that would have been fantastic. The last novella we'll talk about is, guys, I finished it. When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Niveau. This is the second book in the... I forget. It's the Singing Hills cycle or something. This is the sequel to The Empress of Salt and Fortune. I really liked that one. I liked this about the same. This does not fall into the problem of Black Tides of Heaven. This is meant to be a novella. You can feel it. This is just, it's so good. So in these stories, you have this priest, and they are traveling to collect stories, because that's what they do in their priestdom, and in the process of traveling somewhere, they kind of get ambushed by tigers, and to save their lives, they trick the tigers, not trick, but they want to tell the tigers a story that the tigers know intimately, and the tigers correct them as they tell the story. And the narrative framing is chef's kiss, and then the story itself is just, it's the definition of like campfire folklore, which I knew that's what it would be, and that's exactly what I wanted. Fantastic. Really great time. I really like this novella series. If they ever made a bind-up of it, I would totally buy them. I know we have more coming. Cannot wait. So those are all the novellas, short fiction. And now for my definition of unique narrative structure. I don't know. I think this really does apply for both of these books. The first one is another disappointment. This was The Shadow King. This is a historical literary fiction that is based in the 1930s in the Ethiopia when Mussolini and the Italians are invading for the second time to try and take over, and it's about the guerrilla warfare that is happening and how they fight back and how they keep their land. And specifically, the book claims it's about the women who are never spoken of, and they are for sure there, and they are for sure main characters, but I think if you read the flap of the book, you get a little disappointed with what you are given. And this was not just for me, but for the book club I discussed this at. Our main characters are pretty strong women, and they're doing the best they can in the world they're at, but it's really not about them. Like, the story makes it sound like it's about this woman army, and they play a role, but it's really not about that. It's very slow-paced, and the reason why I put it in narrative structure is that the thing I did like about it is you have traditional prose, then you have these interludes, and then you have these chorus sections that are written in first-person plural that are used in interesting ways to kind of give you some distance during really traumatic and tragic moments, and then you have these photos. So you don't have pictures, but you have descriptions of pictures, because one of our characters is a photographer, so we get to see the pictures he takes. So its narrative structure is really interesting. I really love the audio narrator. This was the immersion read of the month. I listened to this with Robin Miles while physically reading it. And I did not mind the narrative structure the way it was. I thought that actually was really interesting. I think it was a little long, at least for the parts of the story it chose to focus on. They were all unlikable characters. I either didn't like the characters or I was sad for the characters. There wasn't a lot of joy to latch onto, which I get it. This is, a dark point in history. there was a lot going on, because not only do you have our Ethiopian characters dealing with this invasion, you also have Italian characters. You have the Italian photographer who is Jewish, and this is right around the time where Jewish people are starting to be put into concentration camps, and that's a cloud that is hanging over it. His parents are back home in Italy. He stops hearing from them. And the woman, you have to go through so much. The amount of sexual assault and abuse that happens to these women it's a lot. And I actually have relatively thick skin when it comes to these type of scenes, but the author wanted you to know what these women had to deal with and overcome, because a lot of these characters didn't actually feel so much like characters to me as they did representations of other individuals, like to represent the group. And I don't think that's not like quite fair. Like, they were actually characters with, desires and motives, but to some degree, I also felt like, this isn't actually a person in history. This is a person representing this larger group of women in history who never have had a voice. So I liked the historical content. I didn't love the execution, and it didn't have to do with the narrative structure. It had to do more with the length and the fact that, I wasn't allowed to like any characters, at all. They were all a lot. Now, on the flip side, the next one has sort of a unique narrative structure. I'll explain in a second, and I liked it way more, and that's The Galaxy Game by Karen Lord. Now, the first thing I'll say is that the internet will let you think you can read this without the best of all possible worlds, and they are wrong. I think almost universally every negative review I saw for this book was because people picked this up not knowing it was a sequel and being really jarred and feeling like things weren't fleshed out. And part of that is that things were fleshed out in the first book, and I feel like if you don't know the characters from the first book, of course you're not going to latch onto these characters here in the second book. And this expands the world dramatically. Like, the first book, you're more on one planet and you know of other planets and cultures, and now you are just in the galaxy. It's fantastic, and I really liked it. So the reason why I think this is more unique than most traditional, straightforward narrative prose is you have third-person point of view, but you also have first-person point of view, and it's not always spelled out who you're looking to, and you jump around. Like, there are only a set number of point of views, but you jump a lot, and it's really interesting why she chooses which person is the first point of view versus the third, because our main character is actually not the one written in first-person point of view. So that's why I am putting it in this category, but I was just so happy to be back in her prose. I really love how she writes. I really liked the metaphor of this galaxy game and what it represented and the problems they were trying to solve. It's probably never going to be my favorite Karen Lord. I think that's still solidly the best of all possible worlds, but it was so lovely to see these characters again and go back to the world. And goodness, I'm so sad that these books don't perform well or haven't sold well, because these were written almost 10 years ago. And there is a plot thread that is in this book, and I know from the beginning, you're told from the beginning it's not going to be solved. I'm like, give me a novella. Where's the third book? I want to know. So, but I mean, I don't think these books, even though they're soft sci-fi that I think is very marketable, and I know a lot of people who like soft sci-fi like this, they just aren't picked up all the time. But I had a great time. It was lovely, and yeah. So now we'll get into the fantasy books. So where do I want to start? We'll start with the rereads. Yeah, we'll start with the rereads. I reread Jade War, just got Jade Legacy. You can probably see it right there. I am really excited to get into Jade Legacy. Jade War was really great. So I think on my first read, I gave it 4 stars, and this one it's going to be 4.5 stars. It still didn't quite become a 5-star read, and I think part of that is that this book takes place over I want to say half a decade or something like that, and that is a long time, which means you have some pretty substantial time jumps. And I think I just like my stories to be tighter, but also this is very much a middle book. This has arcs that kind of happen in its own right, but this is a lot of setup for what I think Jade Legacy is going to have happen in terms of following this family dynasty. And I think maybe I'll like it more in the context of the whole arc once I see how this set things up, because that's what happened in Jade City, which I think is a very complete arc within itself. I have someone in my Discord who thinks maybe they'll just read Jade City and not move on because they really like Jade City and they don't typically read series, and I can see how that would work. Jade City on its own is a complete story. I don't necessarily feel like Jade War on its own is a complete story. I feel like it is a very quality bridge between the two books. And I guess I'll know once I read Jade Legacy, if I will like it more or about the same. I can't imagine liking it less. It was a really good time, really solid audiobook, and a book that I love even more now on reread, The Mask of Mirrors. I don't know what I was thinking in January where I'm like, the ending's not that good, 4.5 stars. Sorry, 5 stars. The ending is not my favorite part of the book, I guess, but the ending was fantastic. What was I even thinking last time? I love it. I loved everything about reading this. Like, in hindsight, it's even better. Like, I thought once I removed the mystery of who is the Rook and what's happening, I wouldn't like it as much. No, I liked it even more knowing that information. I liked it even more knowing the events that happened, because then I could focus on other things and piece other things together and think about what's going to happen in The Liar's Knot and what's going to happen. I don't know. I still love Vargo. I love Ren even more now. This was a case kind of similar to Mistborn, where I don't remember loving Vin as much when I read it the first couple times. And then reading it as an adult now, I'm like, oh, Vin, you and I, we're the same in some ways, like not obviously one-to-one. I didn't grow up on the streets. I'm not like Vin. But, like in terms of Vin's anxiety representation, and here with Ren, her reasons for being a con artist, so relatable. For those of you who are new to my channel maybe and don't know what The Mask of Mirrors is, because I feel like I talk about this book all the time. This is probably like the 5th video in a row where I mention The Mask of Mirrors or something ridiculous like that. But Venetian fantasy, ballroom politics, a mask avenger, you're trying to figure out who it is, found family to the max. Really cool dream magic, tarot magic, astrology, a plot that needs to be uncovered. It's great. It has stakes, it has consequences. I love it. It's so good. It's so good. So I'm excited. Next week, Liar's Knot. It's gonna be great. And so now for the ones that I read for the first time, let's talk about A Crown of Swords, my favorite Wheel of Time book. I'm so broken, everyone. I'm so broken. This is the 7th book, typically referred to as the first book in the slog by some, not all. It is a 4-star read for me still, but that's my highest. This is my highest 4-star for a Wheel of Time book. I liked that it was shorter. I liked that character arc progression occurred. It occurred for almost every main character in really cool, epic ways. That was awesome. I did not like something that happened with a character. If you've read the books, I think it's unnecessary and needlessly cruel and, poorly executed. It has no redeeming quality to me, the thing I'm thinking about. And if you've read the books, But besides that glaring spot that I don't like, I enjoyed a lot of the ways the plot was progressed forward and the time we spent with the characters we were with. So that was a surprise. Was not expecting that. Unfortunately, I think it might be Stephanie's least favorite as we've buddy read it. And I don't know if that's just because I'm so used to being bored by meandering that I didn't notice the meandering in this one the way she did, although I still hold that Lord of Chaos is bloated. That book is long, and it doesn't need to be long, and it doesn't have an ending. Crown of Swords has an ending. Okay, and I value the existence of an ending. So, yeah. Also, it may or may not be up by the time you guys are seeing this, but I was a part of a World Hoppers TV show predictions and excitement video, and we talked about the first 4 episodes, and I think that'll be up. If not, have an eye out for that. I'll at least link the World Hoppers channel down below. And the last book we'll talk about is Bitter Twins. Okay, so Mask of Mirrors' favorite read of the month but second one, the favorite new read, The Bitter Twins. Okay, so I started this when I was in my funky reading mood, and I was like, do I like this as much? But I was in a funky reading mood. And then I read 200 pages of it on my road trip home. I don't read 200 pages of anything in a day, and that was super fun. And then I finished it while I was home, and while I was finishing it, my heart rate was elevated. I was anxious. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was going. I was so stressed all the time, but in the good stress, in the stress you want to feel when you are in a story and you're like, I'm so here, I am invested. It was great. It was great. I cannot wait to get to the 3rd book and see what's going to happen. Oh, but if you just like a good, entertaining fantasy, you really should pick up this series. I think it really has a lot of great things. Like, it has enough character development and quiet moments for character relationship driven people like me, but very adventurous and action packed. And it's really good at being like, oh yeah, something's not right here. Just wait. And like, because there's like this place that they went to in this book, and the minute you're there, you're like, I don't feel good about this place. And neither does one of the characters. And then it just gets messed up. It's just like really gross sometimes, but also still very like light. And I don't know, I wouldn't call this grim dark, and I wouldn't call it horror, but some of the imagery is quite grotesque. Like, so just know that going in. But there are very, very cute animal companions, okay? Very cute. This whole series is made for people who like animal companions, who like platonic friendships, who like funny scientist female characters. It was so fun. It was a fun time. So those were the books. So like I said, it was a mixed bag. I'm not used to having so many threes, and it was kind of a small number of books, but I'm happy with it. I'm pretty content. I think December has the potential to be like phenomenal, depending on how many I get to read, but even then, I think the quality is just going to be top notch. Let me know what was your highlights or disappointments in November. If you want to leave an emoji, what emoji should we leave? I think a tiger, for when the tiger came down the mountain, because I actually finished that. That has been on many a TBR, and I did it. I am caught up on that novella series. And if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.